Hello, hello. You are listening to The Long Game, and I'm your host, David Lee Kim, co-founder of Omniscient Digital. In this episode, we chat with Alexa Kilroy. Alexa is Director of Marketing at stay.ai and former Head of Brand at Triple Whale. stay.ai, the company she's currently at, is a product that helps you actively grow your subscription revenue through a suite of AI-powered acquisition, retention, and churn reduction tools. Prior to entering the e-commerce tech world, she worked on the brand side, scaling growth marketing for some of the most profitable brands in D2C. In this conversation, we talk about Alexa's journey from teacher to marketer, and then her evolution as a marketer from brand to paid to marketing leadership. She shares her thinking on how B2B brands should think about building a brand that's informed by the company's goals. And while there's no one-size-fits-all approach to brand building, we do agree that most companies shouldn't be a media company. Then we end the conversation getting into hiring and how to build a scrappy marketing team and culture. I think you're going to learn a lot. Here's my conversation with Alexa Kilroy. Alexa, welcome to The Long Game.
Hey, what's up, man? Super stoked to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you, and thanks for making the time. So we'll jump straight into it. You're currently Director of Marketing at stay.ai, and yep. I'm aware you had an indirect path into marketing. And granted, I only know like a handful of people who had a direct path into marketing who knew they wanted to do it. But maybe let's start with like, what were their life milestones that led you to stay.ai?
Yeah, totally. So I actually graduated with like a super specific degree. I wanted to be a teacher my whole life. I went to Boston College because they had a really stellar education program, took like classes at night, student taught during the day when I was 19 years old, basically other 19-year-olds. It was wild. Definitely a good experience in fearlessness and building up my Teflon resilience. So that's for sure. But I taught for a little bit. And frankly, I was like in my early 20s and I was broke. And I was like, this cannot be my forever right now. Because at the time I was living in Austin, Texas, which the cost of living was just rapidly hockey stick increasing. And so I had always had an interest in like photography and videography. And I was like, maybe I'm going to go down this weird creative path and, you know, have my quarter life crisis a little early and do something like that. So as I was leaving my teaching job, I got a foot in the door job at an ed tech company doing like post sales account management, was super bored, left my LinkedIn and open to hire, got recruited by a e-com company at the time that was subscription based superfood supplements. And I took another very foot in the door early on job with them, doing basically customer service and like whatever I could do. And very much begged and pleaded to just have the opportunity to do more and more. And so because I was an English teacher, I got into copywriting, and then I wrote ad copy, and then I did email copy. And then I had this creative interest. So then I started doing product photography and videography. And basically at the time they were a super small team. So I crawled my way up the ladder and ended up actually running paid advertising for them after much sink or swim on the job training. Granted, Facebook ads were a way different beast back then, but got into it there, read a lot of books, did a lot of like learning through experience and through trying to teach and train myself online. Bounced around a couple different e-com companies in-house working in marketing and advertising, and was very much like on the growth marketing side. Did a little consulting, a little dabble here, a little dabble there. And then about 2 years ago now, the former CMO of Triple Whale, if you're familiar, another Shopify SaaS company, data and analytics company, reached out to me to grab a drink and just kind of chat and hang out. He ended up offering me a job on the spot and trying to get me to come to Triple Whale. I thought SaaS was going to be boring, so I told him no a bunch of times. But then we kept hanging out, and I really liked him as a person. And I was like, all right, it can't be that bad to work for. I'll give it a go. So I ended up on the SaaS side for like a year as a head of brand at Triple Whale. Got to do a billion different things there for B2B marketing. And then around May, June of this year, which is 2023, I called up Gina Pirelli, who was one of our co-founders and became a friend of mine through the industry, and was just kind of sharing with her again, probably another quarter life crisis of like, what am I doing? What do I want to do next?
Happens every couple of years, it sounds.
Yep. And she was like, hey, you know what? We were going to hire a marketing leader. You should be our girl. And so lo and behold, I ended up taking a job running marketing from pretty much a blank slate here at Stay. And it's been, so far I'm about 2 months in. It's been wild drinking from the fire hose vibes, but awesome so far.
Yeah, I can't wait to ask a lot more about that. I think the thing that has come up in a couple conversations recently, and I was actually talking to an old friend who I knew her since like 8th grade. And since 8th grade, she wanted to be like a marine biologist. That was her dream job. She became a marine biologist, which is amazing because the world didn't like kill her dreams. But after like 2 years of doing that, she was like, this doesn't pay enough. I have to teach and I have to deal with a lot of bullshit I don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
And then she called me up one day and she's like, hey, guess what? I'm in software marketing now. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like a recurring pattern of like people getting their dream jobs as a kid and then realizing it's not worth it anymore. It's kind of a shame.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is like, of course, throughout college, whatever, you still have to pay bills, but I think for most people, you're still scaffolded by your family and your family wants to support your dreams. So my family was like, you're going to change the world. You're going to be a teacher. And I love them for that. They're incredibly supportive, but also like, I genuinely didn't understand how like, once you're paying car insurance, health insurance, rent, like everything, I was like,
Yeah.
I have like $0 to my name. All my coworkers are 50 years old. I just moved to a new city. Like, how am I supposed to be a 21, 22-year-old? And so I'm glad they never like, talked me down from doing what I did, because it probably would have really upset my psyche and hurt me a lot if they told me to go a different path. But also sometimes I'm like, mom, girlfriend, could have told me, 30K is not money these days. Somebody should have told me when I was signing that contract.
Yeah, it's so interesting how it all plays out. And they were probably like, should we tell her? But decided not to because they didn't want to like discourage you or anything. So such an interesting tension to walk as like friends and a support network.
Yeah.
You mentioned when you move into ecom from teaching that you were doing a bunch of different things, like clawing your way up and taking on additional responsibility, doing photography and copywriting. And looking at your marketing experience, it just sounds like you were a scrappy marketer. Like you were able to make do with whatever resources you were given. You ended up going into paid, which in my mind is kind of like the opposite of like the more creative side of things, like photography and all that, because it's more data driven, performance driven. And then you move into like an operations role, which to me is even more like onto the other side of like I guess quote logical. And then you went to brand. So I'd love to hear how you tell the story around like your evolution as a marketer. Like, was that intentional? Was that just whatever was in front of you? Like, how do you think about that looking back?
Gosh, I'll tell you, it wasn't intentional. It was very much like, here's the opportunity that's being presented to you. You can either learn how to do it well, or you can find somewhere else to work. And it was always respectful and like said with well intention and gave me lots of learning opportunities. I think probably because I had a background in education, I'm just obsessed with learning and I'm obsessed with mastering new things that I don't have experience doing. And I'm the type of person where I will like stay up all night for weeks on end to figure out how to do that thing well, and like watch YouTube videos, take online courses, call people that I know that do the job, like take a billion notebooks of notes. Actually, it's kind of funny. I have this like hoarded pile of cheap Target notebooks that I would fill out and like take notes in like a school kid whenever I was trying to learn new things.
Yeah.
Because I found that writing things down helped me memorize them and get better at them. But I think I've always been kind of a weird person. I'm often told that I'm a weird type of marketer in the sense that I'm like totally split, half left brain, half right brain, where I'm super data and performance driven, but then I can also like flip my switch and be like, okay, now I have the data to inform which direction my creativity should go. Time to turn on the creative brain, be informed by that data, but then come up with something really cool to action off of my insights or whatever. And so I think that bopping around is non-traditional because most people are like very much, 70% one side of the brain and 30% of the other. Granted, I know that that's like not totally real science, but you know what I mean? It's just like, it's how we train ourselves and like the muscles that we flex every day. It's like if you only work out your right bicep all the time, your left bicep's going to get weak. Mm-hmm. So I think I was just one of those people where I constantly want to be exercising both sides of my skill sets. And I think it partially has to do with how I was raised. So I'm actually an only child, and I pride myself on being an only child, that my parents were not like, let me coddle you. They were like, go be autonomous and independent and learn how to do things for yourself. And so that level of like autonomy and independence has caused me to crave like excelling in different things like intrinsically, and then also has caused me to like what's the phrase that I'm looking for? I can't be bad at things. Like I refuse to be. I have to figure out how to hack them or master them. And I'll work endlessly to get really good at something or figure out what's next. And that also works really well in the types of companies that I thrive in. I like working in that like early stage Series A or small teams where you wear a lot of hats and you have a lot of impact. And so I think it's just kind of been like, this is what role is available. I wanted to be here. I wanted to kind of do these things. So it meant I have to do those things. But I agree. It's totally weird and it looks crazy on a resume. And sometimes I worry people think I'm a psycho.
I can totally relate to that weird marketer thing. Like the other day we were talking to a design agency and they asked like, who built your website? And I said, I did. I designed it. I built it. It's fun. And then I'm like, yeah, but I'm also in spreadsheets almost all day too. Like, I love designing stuff. So it's not something that people are used to seeing. And what I'm hearing, at least from everything you're talking about, it sounds like it's just growth mindset and having agency. Like I choose to want to be good at this stuff. Like you could easily have said, oh, that's not for me. I'm not good at it. I'm not that type of person, in quotes. But you're like, I'm just going to learn and figure it out. I'm going to go pick up some books and go probably Google a lot to figure out whatever I need to figure out to make it work.
There's frankly like one thing I won't touch, and that's coding. I've tried so hard. Like I literally put so much energy and effort into it. I even bought like old textbooks and taught myself how to code like a basic tic-tac-toe game on an old like HP computer in my house. Like what I've learned is that there are things that you can also work really hard on, but they're never going to be as good as things that you are not also naturally more good at. And so I think part of scaling and leveling up in my career has also been knowing like when it's time to do something yourself versus, the like operational cost of me trying to learn how to do this thing and hack it myself. And the quality that will come out will not be as good as if I outsource it. So coding is like that's my kryptonite. I just can't deal with it. But other than that, you can pretty much throw me into anything and I'll probably figure it out.
I had a similar realization. I had like multiple JavaScript, HTML, CSS books. I actually took a General Assembly course and finished it, which was great. So I knew enough. But when I worked with my software engineers back at HubSpot, I was like, yeah, I'm going to leave the coding up to you guys. I'm nowhere near this. I'll just hack something together and maybe you can fix it or something. But definitely not going to be worth the time to put in. So I want to focus first on the creative and like maybe the brand side, because I know in doing my research, a lot of your previous podcasts were during your time at Triple Whale and in e-com world. So what you did mention something interesting, and brand is this very nebulous thing to a lot of folks that aren't in the industry. I think it's nebulous even to people who are in marketing. And you defined it pretty clearly in one of your other interviews. You said that brand is how people perceive your company. As broad as that sounds, it's almost intentional. And you mentioned, like if you were to go to Times Square and ask people like, what is Triple Whale? Like, what would they say? I guess if we were to make that more practical, how would, let's say like a B2B brand go about measuring and or like validating whether or not their brand efforts are, quote, succeeding? And like, how do you know it's succeeding?
Yeah, I think, it depends on like your mediums and methods that you are using at the time for what you classify as brand marketing, and then also generally like what evaluatory tools that you use. So if I think back to my time at Triple Whale when I was trying to evaluate the efforts of brand marketing, there's like the pretty old school stuff where you can actually send surveys and ask people to. I remember we specifically did a survey at Triple Whale, both internally and externally to clients, and we asked them like, how do you describe Triple Whale to other people? I did it on case study calls too, or I'll ask questions like, if you had to convince a friend, if you're trying to convince your friend that they need Triple Whale because you genuinely think they need it for the business, how do you explain it to them and explain why they need it? So there's like both qualitative and quantitative like information gathering that you can do through surveys and calls and things like that. And I think also part of it is participation in general. So like evaluating participation in things like surveys, or when you throw events, how people engage and participate and show up to those events. So for example, in Q1 of this year, when I was back at Triple Whale, we threw an event called the Whaleys, which was part, oh gosh, it's a whole thing, but it was great. It was kind of like, it was inspired by the Dundies from The Office. So we wanted to do like an award ceremony for e-commerce, but then we also wanted to do like an educational kind of conferencey style event. And I think it was like, there were a lot of factors to me that really helped prove out the brand development work that we had done. But beyond the actual event and execution itself, it actually ended up being that we sold out of the event really fast. We didn't expect to. We had to adjust our space accordingly. So that was like a really good leading indicator that our brand efforts were doing well. And there actually happened to be a freak ice storm in Austin, Texas at the time, which canceled a ton of flights, like really just screwed over everyone's travel. And I still remember to this day, we let people join like a WhatsApp group chat to talk about coming to the event and chat with their friends, whatever. And there were people who were flying into Houston and taking 3-hour Uber drives just to get to this event because they wanted to be there so bad. And they knew the value that Triple Whale would work to provide at like an in-house educational event like that. Like people were just going above and beyond to make sure they could get there. They were dealing with like 8 hours of delayed and canceled flights. I actually had no power at the time at my own house. So I had to stay in a hotel to be able to run the event for the weekend. Like it was just one of those things where we had both qualitative and quantitative data to support like, okay, we really pulled this off from a brand recognition and respect and love and adoration kind of standpoint. And so at the end of the day, people ask me, how do you evaluate this? How do you evaluate that in marketing? And I think it depends on what method of distribution you're using to try and work towards brand marketing, performance marketing, or whatever. But whatever that method is, you need to figure out like the qualitative and the quantitative leading indicators that you can use to kind of proof out that your efforts are making sense.
Yeah. So in short, it depends. Like
truly, I know.
And pick a metric and stick with it. That's, first of all, I do remember I had friends living in Austin at the time, and I was like, why is there a storm like that in Austin right now? Like, and then now there's hurricanes in Southern California. It's
so
wild
weird
stuff going on. But that is crazy that people were so committed to get to that event. Like 8-hour delays, 3-hour Ubers. It must have felt great to just see people so excited about like the brand and the event and everything. Like, I'm sure there were conversations about like the team was having and maybe some sort of, I don't know if trophy is the right word, but like some memento that you kept to remind yourself of like that sort of event.
Oh yeah. I still have like the event posters, and I still have t-shirts from it and all kinds of things. But yeah, it was a huge win. It was pretty wild. I remember for our founders to see in this group chat, people being like, yeah, I had to fly into Dallas or Houston and I'm taking an Uber overnight at 3 a.m. to get there by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Like that was pretty nuts and very rewarding for sure.
Yeah. It's fascinating hearing about that because I heard on another interview you did this like D2C after dark thing with like, maybe you can share a little bit more about that. I'll get into my next question, but that sounded like such a cool project that you worked on that might inspire folks. If you could share a bit of details on that.
Yes. So D2C after dark was one of the craziest things I've ever done in my entire life. And I'm pretty sure that one day I'm going to be 50 years old and I'm still going to get asked on a podcast and someone's still going to be asking me about D2C After Dark. I'll give you the quick TLDR, but if you want to listen to more about D2C After Dark, just Google my name. There are like 3,000 podcasts where I explain the whole thing in detail. We're at the point now where my team and I are joking, like, you know that slumber party game where if you like supposedly say Bloody Mary 3 times in a mirror, like the creepy thing pops up behind you. That's what I joke about D2C After Dark, because it's like, I feel like somebody whispers it and then suddenly it comes back. But yeah, we filmed a multi-episode reality TV show series. It was definitely a brand marketing play. The concept was that we had a lot of e-commerce brands that would work with Triple Whale that would outsource and hire content creators to make photo and video content for them to use for advertising. And often you just pay these people through the internet money, and then they deliver assets. You don't really know about what happens behind the scenes. You don't really know how to like coach them on how to make content more like what you want or brief them better. And so conceptually what we said was we're going to put a bunch of these content creators in like a sweet penthouse in Austin, downtown, kind of like The Real World or one of those MTV shows. They get to live together. They get to be friends. We're going to take them on all these cool excursions. And then while they do that, while we film them for these multiple days, I think it was like 4 or 5 days, we stocked the whole house with a ton of different D2C products from different brands that wanted to participate in the project. And they shot content, creative, whatever, throughout the entire weekend. So in addition to watching like the fun reality TV show part of it, you're also watching what goes behind the scenes into these creators, like setting up tripods, doing all these crazy things, bending in wild positions to get you like the content that you want for your ads, and like, you know, spritzing dew droplets on a bottle or whatever, like kinds of cool stuff. And so we wanted to help lift up that creative community, and then also do a project that was kind of a big swing, crazy bet for a SaaS company to do, as well as do something cool for a bunch of our customers, our clients at the time, who we had really great relationships with. So in exchange for sending us product, they got tons of cool assets out of the multi-episode project at the end.
So that's one of the types of campaigns or projects or whatever you want to call it that gets me thinking a lot about the way marketing is headed, right? Like with the macroeconomic situation and companies are trying to do more with less. And it seems like there's kind of a fork in the road where there's these companies that are going all in on brand marketing. They're like, we're going to build a media company. We're going to start a podcast. We're going to do these shows and documentaries, like Paddle comes to mind as well. And then there's the other side of the spectrum where it's like, nope, every dollar needs to be tied to revenue. Like I need to know dollar in, dollar out. Are you, one, I guess, like, are you seeing that as well? And like, what's your take on that whole like dichotomy that's sort of happening right now in the marketing world?
Yeah. So I think I personally am not seeing that like crazy big bet innovative content thing happening blanket across all of B2B SaaS. I'm seeing it in niche industries, and e-commerce tends to be one of them. My philosophy around this is that if you want to do something cool and innovative, it needs to be in a format or through a lens that your ICP human, not just the company that absorbs the content, is going to enjoy. And so, for example, like with D2C After Dark, we knew that a lot of the founders that sign up for Triple Whale for their company, or those like CMOs, whatever, they're in this kind of sweet spot between like 25 and 35. And so they had really good vibes about this like retro MTV, The Real World kind of situation. And so it made sense as like I'm not going to say it totally made sense. It was still a big bet, but it was something that we could kind of like target their personalities and their interests and their age demo with, to do this kind of crazy big bet swing. I would say there is a fine line between doing something that makes sense and becoming part of an oversaturated market. And I do not think that every single B2B SaaS company needs to be a media company that has like 37 different podcasts and, 18 different types of content resources and whatever. I think you need to think really critically about two things. One, again, who your person is and how they interact with brands and content consumption, all that stuff. And then two, whatever channel or distribution or whatever method that we're talking about that you're using, like how are you as a company going to provide a unique spin or unique edge on that thing that you do at volume over a period of time? Because the last thing you want to do is like spin up a podcast network for your email marketing company, and then it doesn't make sense to scale. You don't have the resources, people aren't listening to it, whatever, and then you've made this big bet investment and it just doesn't make sense. And so I think you have to be really in tune with who your people are, because frankly, like if your product is like in some sort of science and technology world, like making a reality TV show is probably not going to make any sense. Like if you're speaking to engineers or scientists, the way that they consume information and enjoy absorbing information is probably very different than a 30-something-year-old marketing lead at an e-com company. So I think at the end of the day, again, it's an it depends answer, but it's like, who is your person? And then make your big bet around your person, not just because everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, I love that you add that nuance. And I think maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the LinkedIn and Twitter algos making me see everyone talking about starting a media company. And the
No,
first
you're
thing
right.
that
It's a
comes to mind
thing.
is the thing that comes to mind is, wait, if you're producing documentaries and all that, wouldn't you be competing for attention with Netflix and HBO Max? Like who is going to choose to watch your thing over the plethora of options that they have?
Right.
But the thing that you mentioned that I actually haven't heard as part of that conversation is it should be based on your ICP. Like you should understand them and have a hypothesis. It sounds like you knew that your ICP was within a certain age range, which I fall into, who maybe is really excited about their work and the brands they're working for and wants to learn about this stuff. And you had a strong conviction that it's something that would work. Meanwhile, I think a lot of what I'm seeing is like every company should be a media company, like a blanket statement. And maybe that's what makes headlines and all of that stuff. But it's interesting to hear the way that you thought about whether or not we should do that thing. And I'm sure it wasn't like the one bet you made. I'm sure there were like other activities in your marketing portfolio to make sure if that thing didn't pan out, that the company wouldn't go to zero.
Yeah. And I think also, like, you think about it, marketing as an industry goes through waves of innovation, right? So social media blew up. Everybody was all obsessed with social media marketing. We need to invest our resources there. We need to go crazy. Then there was this, I would say, like 5-year block, which I think is still kind of leaching into present, but where everybody's obsessed with personal branding. And so like your founders and your executives all need to be like incredibly active everywhere and being your own person in addition to being the company. And I'm not saying that any of these things are wrong. I'm just saying that there's like trends and waves, right? As there are with clothing and music or whatever. And now now we're a media company phase is currently live. And I'm watching people spend a ton of money on podcast equipment or filming equipment. You know, they're like trying to build out a leg of a business that, like, if you're a fintech product, do you really need to have a media company armed to your business? Is that scalable? Is it financially stable? Are you going to wish that you didn't do that in a year? Like, I think people just kind of get like, I need to be on the curve because everybody else is doing it or my competitors are doing it, instead of thinking, what is my competitive advantage that I can bring to whatever content format my ICP absorbs best?
Yeah. So then maybe let's move into something a bit more tactical or like tangible for our listeners and talk about like, how do you think about building a B2B brand in today's world? Like, and maybe to make it more like grounded, maybe you can use stay.ai or Triple Whale as an example of how you might think about that.
Yeah. To me, the process of building something like that, you have to have a very deep understanding. Well, assuming that you're not a net new business, like at both of those companies, I came in and the business already existed for 6 months or a year, right? So I already had data to work off of. But I think you need to build a very robust, a detailed understanding of not only the people that are already using your product, but your competitive landscape, your industry, your everything. And then you need to figure out what differentiates you, of course, like in any marketing philosophy standpoint. I literally do so many customer interviews. I do internal interviews. I do industry interviews with other people that have never even heard of my product. Like, I become an absurd student of everything that's even in my aura related to the business that I'm working at. Sphere of influence, for a more legitimate term. But I become like an obsessive student of everything. And then I ask myself, okay, like, what can we do? What can we provide to this space that is unique, different, whatever? And then how are we going to distribute that and build something around it? How are we going to change our messaging, or how are we going to change our design or our product or whatever to become that person in this space? And I think Stay is in a unique place right now where, if you're not familiar with Stay AI, we are in subscription management tech. And so our product was created within the past year or so because our co-founders were the co-founders of a massive e-commerce agency called Lunar Solar Group based out of New York City. They worked with a ton of subscription e-com businesses who are dissatisfied with legacy subscription products. Because a lot of legacy subscription products were built 10 to 15 years ago. And yes, they've been updated because, the internet has become different. But they're largely same. And so there was room for optimization and innovation. And while we technically still fit into the subscription app and subscription tech category, what we're trying to do is effectively build almost like a subcategory in which subscription becomes a performance channel, in which it's not a set it and forget it thing that you have to have recurring revenue for your business in the background, but instead it's something that you're actually optimizing and putting a senior CX or senior retention leader on to really maximize the LTV out of your existing customer base, because it's always cheaper to do that than to acquire new customers, particularly because digital marketing advertising just gets exorbitantly more expensive every time I blink my eyes. Mm-hmm. So I think for us, it was like figuring out who is looking for a solution that aligns with what we're providing, and then what are we going to do about who we are to make sure that we're reinforcing and communicating that to them and kind of building brand around that. And so it's come from everything from web design to how we communicate with customers on the internet, how we communicate with customers via email marketing. Like there's just been kind of a big overhaul in a lot of our different touch points to stress like, this is who we are, this is what we really do, and this is what differentiates us. And then backing that up with thought leadership and all kinds of good things to establish ourselves as like a key player in the space.
Yeah. So you did mention that you're building up the marketing program from scratch, and maybe without sharing, unique strategic decisions that you've made, I'd love to hear more about like, what was your framework for going in and triaging like, hey, what are my priorities now? Like you mentioned, revamping copy on the site and email and web design and like starting to produce thought leadership. What was the process, or what did that look like to figure out how you prioritized each of those things and stack ranked them?
Yeah. So for me, like in B2B marketing, my job really is to pour people into the top of funnel, so that we can progress them to the middle of the funnel, so that my sales team can really like drag them further and further down without framing it in a, I don't mean to make it sound negative, but that's just kind of like how it is. And so my job is actually like very heavily sales enablement, I would say, particularly with a product like ours, where you can't just like go set it up yourself. You have to book a demo, there isn't like touchless. So you have to book a demo, you have to work with our team to migrate onto our product. Because subscription data is just hairy, and we've made it work really quickly, and we have a great system for it now. But it just happens to be that like the subscription specific industry, because it's recurring payment and there's credit card information, all these things. It's like you don't want to mess it up. You don't want to let somebody just go try and do it themselves. And so my job is really to focus on sales enablement. So for me, once I was coming in, I just generally did kind of an audit of like everything that already existed that predated me. So like any email that we had already sent in the past, I did a huge like Google Analytics web behavior audit. And then I worked really closely with our sales and our CX teams to understand what things they are doing that help them snag people and close deals, as well as who our happiest customers are. Or, who are the people that are having the most success with the product, so that I can kind of replicate and move towards that. And so for me, it was like using a lot of that, again, qualitative and quantitative data to focus on the biggest areas of opportunity for our business that would help continue to drive leads and kind of be a pipeline generating mechanism. In addition to kind of building out, I would say, some of the basic core stuff that you need to have. Like you need to have email drip campaigns, and you need to have, functional bits and bobbles here and there. You need to have a presence on the internet. But like when it came to for example, revamping our web pages, it was very much based on like where we're seeing the highest traffic and then the highest event clicks, right? Like on the websites where people are engaging the most. It's like, okay, we're going to audit and then work on those pages first, as opposed to like this massive overhaul project that would keep us stopped up for months. So kind of piecemealing things where there was the most need and then value. But I'm also big on like building matrices for things. So like, stack ranking things based on level of effort in addition to the highest perceived impact, in order to kind of organize them. Because if you come into a blank slate with an already humming business and a small team, it's very easy to just be like, very overwhelmed, like dog
Yeah.
dumpster fire cartoon, everything is fine, you know?
Yeah, you can. It's kind of like you need to not start any new initiatives. Don't like start working on anything until you actually get a lay of the land and understand like, oh, this won't be impactful because this no one cares about this thing. Like no one's
Yep.
it's not getting any traffic or it doesn't actually help the sales team. And then figure out what would actually be impactful before you start saying like, hey, here are my priorities.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking at the site, I saw that content marketing seems to be a core play for y'all. Like y'all publish a lot of content. Like what was the process to determine the strategy there? Like how to do it well, like how to evaluate success of your content program? Because it seems like you're publishing pretty frequently.
Yeah, great question. To my prior point, it was backed by data, even when it wasn't as robust as it is now. So our sales team had seen a lot of success leveraging case studies. And so that became one of our big projects was to revamp the existing ones that were kind of haphazardly created, update and beef up the good ones, and then keep pumping them out because they just ended up being a great enablement resource. And then to kind of our broader brand play of being not just like a set it and forget it subscription enablement solution, but more so a optimization and almost like growth marketing, but in the retention sphere solution. People aren't used to that. They're not used to thinking of subscription as this thing that can unlock a ton of untapped revenue for them because it's been this thing that just runs in the background. And so in order to get people to buy in and believe and understand what we're really doing, it required education. And so that's kind of why content marketing has become so core to us is being able to show people the examples of how and why investing in your subscription program in the ways that we offer actually makes sense. Because I think we're always, especially on small teams, especially when we're overworked and tired, we're always looking for like, highest impact, lowest effort. And subscription ends up being one of those things where you put a little bit of effort in and you see crazy ROI. But it's just something that people haven't tinkered with a lot. And so it was necessary to kind of really start building out the education to help them understand that subscription can be a performance channel for them.
Yeah. And then how do you, once you start figuring out like the priorities, including like the content marketing program and all that, how do you figure out like how the team's going to be staffed? I think I saw there you have a pretty small marketing team.
Yeah. Yes. Right now it's basically 3 of us. But yeah, that's a great question. And I just have like a jobs to be done list. And basically whenever I have too many jobs to be done on myself and my other team members, I organize the jobs to be done list into what makes sense as a role. And then that's kind of what we go out and hire for. I think that there's a lot of different philosophy on hiring. Like at this stage of the company, you should hire this type of person, whatever. I haven't found that to work in the past. I've tried to follow frameworks like that, and I've ended up having somebody that has too much time on their hands, and then you're kind of awkwardly trying to fit square pegs and round holes and give them projects, but it's not stuff that they're passionate about or stuff that is done really well. And so for me, it's like when we kind of start to reach that point where it's like, okay, we really need help. We're definitely understaffed, and here are the list of things that either aren't getting done or I'm doing 5% or 10% every week instead of, giving it A+ level effort. Then it's like, okay, let's take this list of things and figure out what kind of role they make the most sense in. And so, like I said, like we're very sales enablement driven marketing organization. And that's what kind of led us to post a JD last week for a product marketing role.
Awesome. Is that the only role you're hiring for? What are open roles are there?
We're kind of in flux right now. I am still, as a marketing leader, trying to determine exactly when I want full-time employees versus outsourcing projects, because it's very hard to forecast if projects that you have a lot of need for right now are going to continue being 40 hours worth of week down the line in hyper-growth stages like we're in. And I think that's something I'm definitely still working on, like as a emerging young marketing leader. So I'm definitely looking for support in some different areas, but we haven't listed a JD yet because I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to piece that time and energy together. And I also would absolutely hate to bring someone on and then they don't have enough work to do, or we have to let them go in a year or something because it didn't make sense at the time. I'm very, very opposed to that. I'm definitely more like hire slow, so that I can make sure I'm doing right by my people.
Yeah, it's like hire to meet capacity rather than hire to open up
Yeah.
capacity, I imagine. And it's interesting because if I were to tie this whole situation back to maybe your first job in e-com where you took on a bunch of different types of roles, you're kind of on the other side of the table now of, well, if I hire someone, their job might change and they can either decide they want to adapt or they can head out. But it sounds like you're trying to even avoid that situation to begin with.
Well, I think for me, it's like when you're in these early growth stages, these things change so quickly. So even like the processes and the way that you tackle things or what you perceive to be priorities can change so quickly. And so what is very high priority right now and a ton of work that could consume someone's life for the next 6 months, like that might totally shift in Q1 of next year, Q2 of next year. And so I'm always looking for super adaptable, like ambitious and driven people who will be willing to roll with the punches no matter what. I just want to make sure that like the things that we're investing in right now, we're going to continue investing in for a long enough period of time where, if you really train someone up and you get them situated and you build them a home here, you don't have to disappoint them or, put them in something where they're not a fit later, because I've seen that happen so many times at early stage companies. And I was kind of one of those people that was like, I'll figure it out. But some people really want to be a product marketer for the next 10 years. And you want that really talented person who is a really talented product marketer. So you don't want to like screw people over in the long run. And I'm very mindful of building relationships and offering people opportunities that make them excited.
Yeah, it sounds like, at least in your situation, it's a combination of this whole like do more with less, or at least be a lot more cautious with spend and like investing. And then just by nature of being a smaller company, you need to find someone who's more adaptable, maybe a generalist. And when I think about that, I think about like, you need a scrappy marketer, similar to maybe how you and I both were earlier on in a career. And that's something that I've always had trouble figuring out how to look for or like screen for, and like building that culture. Cause maybe sometimes folks they don't want to figure things out, or like they kind of want to focus on this one thing. So how do you think about building a scrappy like marketing team culture so that there's like you don't even have to get to the point where there's like waste or anything like that? Like you're not wasting anyone's time and you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, this is such a hot take. This is going to get me canceled, but it really is. It's bad. Honestly, for me, I think a lot of people who work in HR, hiring, recruiting, or whatever, they see it as a red flag when someone has lots of different jobs on their resume. Like they've worked different places for 1 year or whatever. I've been one of those people who has lots of different jobs on my resume because I was either pulled somewhere else or my role changed because of the company or whatever. And I've never seen that as a red flag in someone. I've seen that as, obviously you have to like get on the call with them, make sure they're not crazy and make sure they aren't getting fired from every job they've ever had, like call a reference or something. But, I think I've seen that as like, typically when it comes to nice, normal people, that's a sign of like adaptability or desire to grow and growth mindset, and not so much a red flag. Obviously do that basic vetting though. And so for me, like I get a little nervous, even if the person is brilliant, when I hop on with someone that's been at like a super massive, super big corporation for 5 years, and their maybe title has changed, but their role hasn't changed a lot. And they've just been kind of like progressing up the corporate ladder. Because often in those massive companies, like you just don't have to be scrappy, and that's totally fine.
Yeah. You can kind of hide.
Yeah. And like, it's very plausible that those people, that wasn't the case for them. But I genuinely know that when I see people who have worked in startups or in small and scrappy companies before, and they've stayed there for like at least a year, and they reference in their interview that they really liked it and tell me about some of the stuff that they did, and you can like hear the energy and excitement in their voice. That's kind of when I know that they can be scrappy. I also am just a very intuitive person, probably because I worked in education and I had to work with teenagers. And so I think I'm pretty good at sniffing out BS in calls and like gathering people's actual energy from how they speak. But when somebody says the phrases like, I like wearing many hats and I can tell that they're being authentic, or one of the ones that I really look for is like, I really like making an impact in the company where I'm at. Like, I actually like doing something that matters for the company. That's when I know they have that scrappiness, because frankly, like, if you're working on a 500-person team and you're working at a slower project sprint scale, you probably aren't having like massive daily impact at your company. But like, I click a couple buttons every day and it seriously impacts what happens at my company, either good or bad, you know? And so I think people with that kind of that growth mindset, that ability to dive in and wear different hats or want to make a big impact, those tend to be my like scrappy marketers that I can sniff out.
I love that. And if you get canceled, I'm going to get canceled because I agree with your hot take. We actually, and I think it goes beyond like HR and people ops folks who say it's a red flag, because at a team member, we're hiring right now, and we have one of our team members who's involved in the process, and she asked like, hey, this person, love this person, but they seem to have only held jobs for 1 year at a time. And I had to communicate like, yeah, but we vetted them. Like, they wanted to grow, they outgrew the place, and they decided to move on, or management issues and things like that. And so I agree with getting context and all of that. And I've always sort of had like side hustles and projects on the side, which to some people is also a red flag, like, oh, he's gonna leave us at some point. But one other trait that I've noticed, and this is kind of putting a spotlight on you too, is people who are teachers are freaking scrappy as hell. Like,
True.
when I worked at a company called ABT, I had a colleague named Kyle Copeman. I don't know if he listens to this, but like, he was a teacher. He built the entire educational curriculum for like the community for that product. And then one of our team members, Sam Lund, also previous teacher, super boss, managing editor, like has run huge editorial processes at like backcountry with like thousands of pieces of content per month. And I'm just like, there's something about what teachers have to figure out and go through as a teacher that makes this marketing job, I don't know if you'd agree with this. And from where I sit, it seems like it's much easier than being a teacher.
Yes, it's way less. I'll tell you, it's at times it's more, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Like, at times it's more brain draining because you are thinking harder about different things. Being a teacher is really hard for a variety of reasons. One, you have no personal time. Two, you are literally performing all day. Like, if you think about it, unless you have like the super sweet little AP kids in your class, like there are many, many classes that I taught where I'm trying to teach books written by old dead white guys to 15-year-olds who are literally just thinking about if the girl sitting next to them in class likes them or not. You know what I mean? Like, and you're trying to get them to like understand what the hell Shakespeare was trying to say, and also why they should care in the first place. So you're literally like on stage performing all day. You have to be chaotically high energy. Pretty much you don't even get time to yourself because you're working like lunch shifts, or you eat lunch in your classroom, you try and close your door, but somebody comes in because they're crying that some boy was mean to them. Like, it was literally the most insane job I've ever worked, because there's this absolute farce that you work during the day and then you're done and then you get 3 months off in the summer. It's not what happens. You work during the day, you go home and work all night until you probably fall asleep with a pile of papers in your bed, and then you maybe get some time on the weekends to do your laundry, and then you have to do teacher prep in the summer. So you really only got like 3 weeks off, and you're violently underpaid. And on the weekends, you have to chaperone dances and basketball games and all kinds of other bullshit. So like, I had the most respect for teachers because you have to have psychotically impressive time management. You have to be on all the time. You can't be afraid of public speaking. You have to be very firm in situations where you don't want to be. Like, having to stand up to a kid's parents when they get in trouble is the worst, but you have to do it. So like, there's just so many things that teachers are primed and prepped for that are skills that translate to every other industry. And they don't even realize that. I didn't even realize that. I thought I was screwed. I was like, I made the biggest mistake. I went to school for this one niche thing. It couldn't have translated better into everything that I've done with my life. And I'm super thankful for the background that I had.
Yeah. Do you ever, I mean, I don't know how active teachers are on LinkedIn, but do teachers ever reach out to you of like, hey, I'm trying to get out of teaching? Like, do you have those type of conversations, like where you're coaching them about
Yeah,
this?
I actually had two people text me about it this week specifically. I think it comes in ebbs and flows. I think it comes at the end of the school year when teachers are burnt out, and then I think it comes right before the school year starts again, and teachers are scared shitless that they have to go back. And then I also just think, like, honestly, as inflation has
Hmm.
been a hot mess in the US, it's been more top of mind, and we currently, like, literally have a teacher shortage in the US, and there are a lot of issues. Um, but I think it's interesting industry wise. A lot of teachers and nurses are friends, and teachers have seen that the nursing industry, when I don't know if it's like empathetic energy person vibes. I don't know how it works out. It ends up being a lot of teachers. A lot of my good friends are nurses, and when there was a massive nursing shortage, there was like we started travel nursing, started spending way more money on nurses to like entice them to work their job. Teachers are fed up right now because they're not getting the same treatment. There's like a lot going on politically about books that are teaching and banning and all these things. Like teachers are just getting like absolute the shortest stick right now. And I think it's more and more prevalent that they're trying to switch into other roles. And it tends to be marketing or real estate. I found that they are driven to pretty quickly. But yeah, every once in a while I do. I'm not a big LinkedIn person in general. I think probably because I have to deal with social media as because I'm a marketer. I like hate doing my own personal social media. But okay, what was that app? Clubhouse that went viral for a little bit. I somehow like accidentally made a place there as like a teacher turned marketer and
Oh,
did a lot of talking about it there. And then I deleted the app and forgot that ever happened until this conversation.
I was on Clubhouse for a hot 10 minutes and I was like, I don't see how this is entertaining or appealing to anyone. And I just deleted it immediately. I checked it
Yeah.
out. Like I checked out threads for like 5 minutes and then I bounced. It's
Yeah, I
not
bounced out of
interesting.
threads so quickly. I was like, there's literally no way. There's no way that I'm
Yeah.
going to do exactly what I do on another platform, just on a new plan. No,
Yeah.
no.
You strike me as someone who is very intentional about like work and wanting to be really good at what you do. Like you said that earlier, and you might be pretty hard driving. Like, what do you do to like unwind or take time away from work? I know you have two rescue pups. Like, what
I
else is
do.
like pulling you away from work?
I saw this. My girlfriend sent me this very funny TikTok the other day, and it was this video of a girl. She was like obviously mocking a situation, acting it out. But that moment where you have like 3 minutes in between meetings and you work from home, so you're like, I'm gonna go sit with my dog for 3 minutes to clear my brain cells. And then as soon as you sit down, you hear like the Slack ping or the Teams ping or the something, and you're like, damn it. And you got to get up and go deal with it. That's definitely me. Like, I'm one of those people where when I need breaks, I literally just love all my dogs and do things with them. I am also insane about crossword puzzles. Like, I literally do probably like 80 a week. Like, I'm really
Oh
into
my
them.
goodness.
Yeah, I'm like really fast at them. I do a lot of them. It's weird. It's become my new like brain outlet, and I think it's because it forces me to think about something that's not work. Like I have to think hard about
Yeah.
something that's not work, and it's just so cathartic for me. I'll like put in a podcast, or I've been listening to a lot of rain sounds on Spotify,
Hmm.
and just like force my brain elsewhere for a little bit, and I feel like it like erases the dust and the chalkboard for me, and then I can go back to work clean. Um, but yeah, I
What's
mean, those are
your
like two of
what's
my things.
Yeah, what's your preferred medium? Are you like doing it on your phone or you're like, nope, all electronics gone. I have a book of crosswords and I'm gonna
Book.
go through like a bunch right now.
Book and like an old school Dixon Ticonderoga pencil.
Wow. I love it. I
Yep.
thought I was I thought I was throwing it back by getting like one of these mechanical pencils where you had to like put the lead in and everything. But no, you went back to the original Ticonderoga, is that right?
The
Yeah.
Ticonderoga. Yep. You gotta sometimes you just gotta tap out. I definitely get, particularly the more senior as I've gotten in my career, I get notification fatigue really bad. Like I get to the point where I have so many backed up, or I have so many emails and Slacks and texts and Twitter DMs that I like freeze almost. I just don't have the capacity to answer them. And so when I reach that point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go tune out for a couple hours, good, go do some crossies, come back when I have the brain space.
Yeah, I'm realizing that that's a thing. Like I just got added to a bunch of WhatsApp groups. I have text messages from like my parents and really good friends. I'm like, I kind of don't want to respond right now.
Yeah.
I have enough taking up my brain space. Now I need to like think of a response and type it out, which seems like not a big deal when I say it out loud, but I'm like, I'm going to go sit with my dog for 30 minutes and then maybe respond to you afterwards. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah, totally. I just get very much like, oh my gosh, everybody feels like everybody needs something from me right now. And I'm out of things to give, even if it's like mom asking me like a very mundane question about, something that's in the basement at home. It's like, I literally can't even answer that right now. My brain is broken.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you have those outlets in your dogs and your crossies. So I know we're coming up on time, so I got some closing questions and then we'll wrap us up.
Cool. Let's go.
All right. You might have already shared one, but maybe another, but what's one opinion you have about business you think people would disagree with?
I think that particularly in the B2B SaaS world, there's the perception that things have to be like very clinical and cold and like, this is who we are and this is what we do and here's the data to back it up or whatever. And the most success that I've ever had, particularly in SaaS marketing, has putting authenticity and a human voice and like light and vibrance into the copy and the design and the marketing activities that we do. That's when I've seen the most success in this industry. And of course, it really depends on exactly what vertical you're in. But I think the perception of what is professionalism is changing with the time as emerging generations grow. And I think that there's a way to be human and real and also be professional and like have a business that is a respected business, but also something that people can enjoy interacting with or reading from. That's not just all boring.
Yeah, I love that. I love that kind of comes out in this conversation. I don't think either of us are like trying to be super polished or anything like that. It's just a conversation. So I appreciate it. What's one impactful piece of advice you've been given?
I've said this in a podcast before, so I'm sorry if someone is hearing it again. But when I was a kid, I was like a super nerd. I'll admit it. I got like the living shit bullied out of me. I was weird. Honestly, I'm not going to say I deserved it, but like there were some hard years. And I remember one night I came home, I was really upset, and my mom sat me down on her bed. And of course, you're a teenager, so like you cry about things, whatever. And I'm crying. And mom sits me down. She's like, listen to me. Kids are assholes. One day, these exact kids that suck and are being mean to you are going to respect the shit out of you one day for being authentic and true to who you are and not afraid to love learning and not afraid to like put yourself out there and all these things that I was doing that were embarrassing at the time because I didn't want to fit in with the cool kids. She was totally right. And I just like lived with that bug in my brain about being, as I like to joke, violently authentic at times. But I've carried that with me, and it ties a lot to the kind of hot take that I just made. Even when it comes to networking or interacting with people in work settings, I just refuse to be anything other than who I am and still remain professional when I do it. And to mom's point, many of those people that super screwed me back in the day show up in my LinkedIn feed, asking me for help, asking me for an intro to somebody.
For a job.
Yeah. And I'm like, ooh, like, you know what? Everyone was a kid once, and I don't shame anyone for who they were back then. But I also like, it's always kind of funny when they come crawling out of the woodwork and pretend like I didn't remember that they were monsters when they were children. But I'm always very nice. And I'm like, well, yes, of course. I'd love to chat with you about your career. Yes.
Maybe I'm petty, but I would just be like, delete.
I believe growth mindset. I believe in transfer. I mean, think about how much I've changed since I was a kid or college or whatever. And it's like, but yeah, I would say they definitely get one strike. Like if they're still an asshole, I'm like, hard no. I'm so sorry. You were born like this, maybe. But yeah, I think that authenticity.
I think what bothers me when that happens is they ask for a favor and I'm like, great, how can I help? And they're like, well, can you just make this intro? And I'm like, can you give me a templated email or something I can send? Like do some legwork for me. Like you didn't treat me well. Like I'm not going to go out of my way to do this. All right. Well, I respect you for responding and being kind. What is one book you'd recommend more people read?
I came armed with free. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
I prepared. For those who are viewing visually, I'm holding up, or aren't viewing visually, I'm holding up the covers.
Oh,
Okay,
classic.
obvious classic, Cash-Vertising by Drew Eric Whitman. If you haven't read this book and you work in marketing, what is you doing? You need to read this book. David can see I literally have it tagged, flagged. Every time I feel creative burnout, I go back to this. It helps me so much. Interesting, less common one, Creative Strategy in the Business of Design. This one is by Douglas Davis. This one is just really cool and thinking about how you're aligning who you are and what you do with how you visually represent it. And then another copy related book, which because everything comes back down to copy at the end of the day, whether you're saying it or writing it, is Persuasive Copywriting. This one my father-in-law actually gave me by Andy Maslin. And very similar to Cash-Vertising, it's based a lot on consumer psychology and right message in the right place at the right time kind of direction. All three are like my holy grail and they sit on my desk and I wish them good night as I tuck my laptop in. No, I don't, but they've been massively helpful, particularly as like a self-starter.
Solid. I think you're the first guest to actually just have the books at hand ready to show on camera. I love that.
I'm extra.
All right. Where can people find you on the internet?
I am on Twitter at Alexa Kilroy, AlexaKilroy. And then if you are interested in looking at a subscription solution for your e-commerce business, definitely check out stay.ai. That is our website, and I'm more than happy to chat with you more about it.
Amazing. Alexa, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for making time.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.